everything this weekend. Hey there, Matt. It's Jim, and it's Monday. Matt, we're going to get into some college baseball here in a sec, but just some reflections on the weekend. It was there's some interesting stuff. I mean, I think San Antonio's kind of surprised a few people going you know uh, into OKC and coming out as dominant as they did.
Yeah, a little bit surprised to see them win and win in the fashion that they did. Big credit to the Spurs and what they were able to do. They took Chet Holmgren completely out of that game, whether he took himself out or what have you, but he was a non-factor. Something that really they couldn't afford to have happen in Oklahoma City,
Mhm.
as you saw. They needed him to be a contributor both offensively and defensively, and he, quite frankly, was neither. Pretty much a no-show in that crucial game seven for him.
Yeah, it was really a bit of a mishmash, right? I mean, if you looked at it, it's like, okay, what do we got going here? And they never really got a look at at what was going on. They basically just kind of, you know, walked their way through that last quarter.
Yeah, yeah, just not what you. Uh, I mean, if you're a championship team like
Hmm.
you're supposed to be, then that's a game that you go out and win. That your culture wins, that your experience wins. The Spurs didn't really have a lot of that coming into this in terms of their
Right.
playoff experience and where they've been. Oklahoma City did. You would have expected some of that to play a factor. I think when you look at it, and the way that Oklahoma City plays basketball, the fact that they were at home, the fact that they had been there before. I mean, at a certain point, you just kind of figured that they were going to be able to get it done because there were so many factors that turned in their direction and in their
Hmm.
favor, and they still couldn't get it done. Now, maybe that's the fact that San Antonio has a 7'5" alien on their team, but at a certain point, you won three games to get you to that point. You've shown the world, you've shown yourselves you know how to get it done. A little bit perplexing that they weren't able to get it done.
Yeah, and I think it's not like we're not going to see these two teams play each other again.
Yeah.
This is going to be an interesting thing. Um, a lot of hype now about the Knicks saying, "Okay, wait a minute, don't count us out." Um, and frankly, that's a pretty. They've gotten themselves a pretty good, made themselves a pretty good case.
Yeah, and I wonder if that comes because San Antonio was the winner. Like I don't know why you would feel better about San Antonio coming out of the West than Oklahoma City. I don't know why you'd feel good against either of those two teams, to be quite frank.
I
Um,
wouldn't, but that's just.
yeah, but there is a certain level of that New York delusion that they live in.
Hmm.
And I think that applies to this Knicks team. Look, they played really well against the Eastern Conference, but it's the Eastern Conference. It's
Right.
arguably the weakest Eastern Conference that there's been in some time. I
Hmm.
mean, you look at the teams that they went through and where they were. It didn't feel like a very strong. Like you don't look at them and go, "Oh wow!" Like the Pistons and the Cavs. Like, boy, they're running through powers.
Right there,
It's
they rocked it all the way.
Yeah, and you have to give credit for the way they won. I think that definitely says something about the team that they have.
Hmm.
Sweeping the Cavs and the Pistons, or not the Pistons, the Cavs and the boy, I'm blanking, the 76ers. But I,
Right.
I don't even think that people expected the 76ers to be in that position. I don't think that they should have beat Boston, but they did. And ultimately, I think the Knicks had one of the easier paths to the finals that there's been in some time. And so, you handled your business the best that you could, specifically in the final two series. But I don't know if this is something that's going to carry over into the quality of opponent that is San Antonio.
No, and San Antonio came out of this basically now in a situation where they are the early favorites, and I have no reason to believe they shouldn't be.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know,
just No reason you would bet against them.
I
There's,
wouldn't.
there's no one on that team, especially with Mitchell Robinson out, and I know that it's not supposed to be a big loss, but you need more than one. You have to be able to rotate bigs to guard Victor Wembanyama, and I just don't think Karl Anthony Towns is your answer to that.
No, no, there's no way that works. Um, I think that we're sitting there going, okay, that's interesting, but they're not. There's no way they match up center wise. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And that's not to say. I mean, there's a lot of teams a lot of places you could say that's not going to happen. But 100% in this particular case.
Yeah, and it's not a knock on Karl Anthony Towns. I think he's going to be a
No.
better offensive matchup for Wembanyama in terms of how he's going to be able to challenge him as opposed to Chet. But it just feels like one of those things where he doesn't have the length to be able to challenge Wembanyama at the rim the same way that Chet did. And to be honest, I'm not sure that as a whole they're going to be able to affect him physically, or not even physically, mentally, the same way that Oklahoma City was able to affect Wembanyama.
No, and what's going to happen? My question here is, what's going to happen whenever you've got a situation with Wembanyama, when Wemby can go out there and shoot threes.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody on that team who can guard him out there.
Yeah, no, his ability to stretch the floor is it's insane. It's not something that is guardable if he's on. Like you get a hand up and you hope, but that's about it.
How do you get a hand up in front of a guy 7 foot?
You just hope that you reach his face. Like
right, exactly. You get him in the chin. Yeah.
Well, that's what the old I think Kobe Bryant his strategy was like get a hand like in their face. Don't try to block the shot.
Right.
That may be their best attempt at it, to be honest.
You're right. Could be. I just think that there's and New York doesn't play as tough a defense as they did in OKC either. So it's going to be interesting. All right. Well, let's move on to some college baseball. And I know that it's been a big weekend in college baseball. We've got St. John's playing Florida State. Now, that game is in Tallahassee. It's presently first pitch has just started on ESPNU. Should anyone want to watch it, turn the sound down while we're off on. That's don't be rude. So Florida State's got to win twice at their own home place against the St. John's team.
Yeah, and look, St. John's is currently the home team. I don't get it. I won't get it, and somebody can come through and they can explain to me the reasoning. I just flat out don't care. If you've played well enough throughout the entirety of a season to host a regional, you should be the home team when you are on the field. I feel like it's that cut and dry and that simple. I don't know why all of a sudden we're in for this equality of like, oh, well, everybody should get to be the home team a couple of times, depending on how long you play. I don't know.
That doesn't work in college basketball.
It doesn't work in college basketball. It doesn't work anywhere. Like you play to earn the right to be the home team. It wouldn't imagine that happening in football. Like, hey, congratulations, you've made it to the college football playoff. By the way, we know we're using your building, but they're actually going to be the home.
We're going to Georgia. We're going to Georgia, but you're the visiting team.
Now, granted, it doesn't change what the fan turnout's going to be.
Oh, sure.
But in baseball, being the home team versus being the away team carries a significant advantage in the fact that you get to bat last.
Right.
You have the ability to bat last. You saw the number one overall seed in UCLA get walked off yesterday.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles. UCLA got walked off on their home field. How does that happen? Like, I don't know. You put together a body of work over an entire year, and you get rewarded with this regional. And what's the reward of the regional? The home fans. That's nice, but
Mhm.
there's an extra added benefit to being the home team,
Right.
and I just don't get it. Like it's like failed communism in baseball. I just don't get it.
Well, here's the funny thing. Okay, so St. John's is the home team now. If
Hmm.
Florida State beats them, which frankly they should, but if they do, then the second game, because Florida State is going to have to beat them twice, FSU FSU in the second game, which would be around 4 or 5 o'clock, depending upon when this first one finishes, and they have a 40-minute rest period, go change, shower, and get back ready for the second game. Then Florida State becomes the home team. So Florida
Hmm.
State could be the visitor and the home team in the same day.
Yeah, yeah, and I just I don't like I don't get it. It's something to do with the split of like we believe like they should split how many times are the home and the away team.
Hmm.
I just don't get that. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Hmm.
Um, and I think typically speaking, when you are the host team, like you still use your dugout regardless of home or away designation and stuff like that. But it's confusing. I guess is the best way to put it, and just not a fan.
Yeah, here's Oklahoma and Georgia Tech. That game is at 3 o'clock on ESPNU.
Georgia Tech will also be the away team there.
Yes, correct.
They're the number 2 overall seed. This
Right.
is the last game of their regional. By the way, they went undefeated up until last night. They hadn't
Hmm.
lost a game. And their reward for losing one game and hosting the regional is in the elimination game, they will be the away team.
Right.
So
Good luck on that.
why?
Number 4, Auburn is the home team against Milwaukee. That's a 6 o'clock game, ESPNU. West Virginia, who just absolutely blew Kentucky out of the water, um, is against Kentucky again. This one's an ESPN2 game at 6 o'clock. Florida is taking on Troy. That's a 6 o'clock game on the SEC network. And Texas A&M and USC plays at 9 o'clock on ESPN. And that game is at Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean this is really a situation where the SEC has a lot of teams already in the super regionals,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean you just look at it and you've got. I mean, we're talking about a situation where Oklahoma can make it, Auburn
Mm-hmm.
can make it, Florida can make it, Kentucky can make it, Texas A&M can make it. They can add another 5 teams on
Mm-hmm.
top of the teams that they already have playing, which is an Ole Miss, Georgia, um,
Texas,
Texas, yes, Texas as well. I'm just
Bama,
completely blanking. Bama, yes,
and Mississippi State.
Mississippi State, yeah. So I mean, they can dominate the super regionals in terms of representation. I was a little surprised that Kansas won. Kansas has an opportunity to host a super regional if Oklahoma were to beat Georgia Tech today.
Mm-hmm. Well, Kansas kind of snuck up on a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. There was almost like a widely held belief that Arkansas was going to win that regional. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people believe that Arkansas maybe should have been hosting a regional, um, and Kansas really just didn't care. They went out and they took care of business, and really, honestly, left no doubt in that regional.
Which I think is pretty cool. From that standpoint, it's it's good to see. Like I'm happy for West Virginia. I mean, you know they didn't have a baseball team a few years ago, and due to some issues that they had with regard to financial issues, and they came back, and now they're back and playing again. So it's good for them from that standpoint. And I think what we're seeing here is, I there was this a lot of sports talk show guys this morning were talking about, well, it's really hard to get into college baseball. It's like, how hard is it to get into college baseball? I mean, you're going to see a number of these guys, next year, if not in double A, some of them in triple A, they're going to the bigs a hell of a lot faster than they used to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially if they're pitching right now. Some of
Mhm.
these top pitching guys, you could see them in the major leagues as soon as the end of next year.
Mhm.
That's the kind of progression that runs through the
Mhm.
minor leagues in terms of pitching right now. Is they get drafted and promoted just about
Mhm.
as fast as they possibly can, and I don't know if that speaks to the lack of pitching, the lack of top end pitching in Major League
Mhm.
Baseball right now, but they have been desperate to get these guys up to the majors recently.
Got a shout out to Cal Poly. Um, Friend of mine for many years was the head coach at Cal Poly, and I'm just happy he's no longer there as the athletic director instead of the baseball coach now. But I mean, it's a small school, and it's got they're in with the big boys.
Yeah, yeah. The winner, hey, the winner of that number one seed regional, like
Mhm.
this was supposed to be UCLA. Like that was the widely held belief. I think UCLA was like it was something crazy. I think they were like a minus
Yeah, they're prohibitive.
six or 700 to win their regional.
Hmm.
And not only did they not win their regional, they didn't make that championship, like the championship series to win the regional.
Hmm.
Cal Poly just swept it 3-0. No question about it. Beat St. Mary's by 3 in the finale as the away team as well. So good on them. That's honestly impressive. Probably the upset of college baseball so far.
Yep. All right. We're going to drop down for a second down to D2 and give a shout out to the University of Tampa. Um, they play Port Loma tonight. That's an 8 o'clock game. And Catawba plays Bentley in the losers bracket. University of Tampa has the opportunity to do something that has not been done in Division Two, and that is win a third straight World Series championship and a 10th World Championship overall in college basketball. World Series, I'm sorry. No, not World Champion. World Series. So they could be D2 champions for a third straight year in a row, and they could notch their record 10th um, national championship in college baseball. So good on the Spartans, and we'll see how they do tonight. And it's going to be some interesting stuff going on there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now time to get into something a little bit different, and that's a story I wrote this morning. You can read it on Sports Talk Florida. It's about the amount of money that's going to be spent on college sports. This coming cycle when the contracts are up.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of speculation about who's going where, and I mean, that's one of the great things about X is that people are constantly moving people from one going conference to another conference and all this stuff, and it's like I the demise of the ACC and the ascension of the Big 12 and the Big 10 picking up four more teams and Clemson and FSU going to the SEC or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, and it doesn't make me popular, but sometimes I have to remind people that there's economic issues here, um, and that is that there's not as much money to spend now as there was 5 years ago. When these contracts were up in the first place, and so don't be surprised if the SEC or the Big Ten either don't expand, or if they do expand, they only expand by maybe one or two.
I'm I'm still of the belief I would be surprised to see anything expand, but it's never say never, especially in the landscape of sports, college sports specifically. But it's hard to see that these two big conferences, specifically a conference where it seems like everybody's focus now, at least externally, it appears that the focus is no longer on expansion. It's about getting NIL and having some boundaries and some guidelines in place for NIL. They're not worried about restructuring their conference and adding teams. They're worried about how do we preserve kind of what we have going now. They're tossing around new playoff ideas. They're tossing around they're tossing around the NIL legislation. Heck, the
Right.
people at the SEC have even tossed around the idea of just seceding from the rest of NCAA
Right.
football.
Mhm.
So there's just so much, and there's so much unknown in terms of the atmosphere of college sports and where everything is headed, and specifically in college football, that it seems like this realignment discussion
Mhm.
is firmly on the back burner.
It is, and I'll tell you, Tony Petitti, uh, the guy who was Warren, right? I'm trying to remember the commissioner's name before Petitti at the Big Ten. Um, gosh, I want to say Mike Warren. He went to the Bears after that. Anyway, he didn't do him many favors. The original deal that with the Big Ten was they really didn't want to expand, but SC came to them and said, "Look, we would be interested in coming to be part of the league, and we could bring Stanford with us." Well, SC and Stanford had long histories with playing the Big Ten, playing with the Big Ten teams, right? So they thought about it and they said, well, okay, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Well, somebody didn't ask Stanford. And so Stanford said, no, we're not going. We don't want to leave. We'll stay. And like, okay, so where do they go? USC goes across town and of course, UCLA's athletic department is in a total disaster, and so they figured, okay, wait, if we can get money from the Big Ten, then let's bolt. So the two LA teams bolt, and then we know what happened after that. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but with Washington and Oregon joining SC and UCLA in the Big Ten, that created a absolute disaster on travel. And I know we've talked about that before. So, for them, I mean, again, we're talking about the Big Ten and the SEC. Who out there is going to give you value? There's just nobody. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, people are talking, well, Clemson and FSU will give you value. No, they won't.
yeah, just not in the way that I think people. Again, people look at this through a lens of let's hop on the video game and move teams around from conference to conference, and
Mhm.
let's create super conferences. And there's a chance the super conferences are coming, but I think that's your next realignment. Like your next realignment is okay. We're doing this thing. It's not going to be realignment in a full scale. It's going to be these are the teams that are in like the upper division of football now.
Right.
These are the teams that are not, and that's your realignment. That's where stuff's coming. Yeah, maybe you get some smaller team movement on the back end of things. Like I know that the Pac-12 is coming back next
Mhm.
year. They added teams from the Mountain West, but that's the kind of realignment and movement that you'll have now. It's not going to be Clemson and Miami moving to the Big Ten or the SEC or anything like that. That's what you're going to see. And then once the ACC's rights deals up in 2031 or 2,
2036.
2036, greatly underestimated that. Then you're probably going to start having those talks about building the super conference. But until then, I just don't see it happening.
Well, I mean, is it possible that both the SEC and the Big Ten are looking at two teams? The SEC is looking at North Carolina, and so is the Big Ten. The SEC, if they were expanded, that would be within their footprint, which is what they do. They do not go outside the footprint. So is it conceivable they would add one or two teams? Yeah, it's conceivable. Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? I don't know. I think it's probably 50-50. The with Maryland, they already have the DC area, so getting Virginia is not going to pick up anything for the Big Ten. So they also are looking at North Carolina. They're looking at Miami, and they're looking at Georgia Tech. Now, does that mean they're going to pick any of those? Any of them? Are they 1, 2, 3? I don't know. Maybe if they think there's value there. There might be a thought that, okay, if we grab Miami and bring them into the fold, that would be a good deal. Maybe we bring them in with either, perhaps Georgia Tech or perhaps Carolina. Carolina, I think, wants a move. Miami has not been overwhelmingly, out there jumping around like Florida State and Clemson to get out of the conference. So I think the only one that's Carolina, FSU, and Clemson have been the most vocal of the group. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting. What I put up on X today as well is that every conference had teams that lost money last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, even the Big Ten lost money last year. So if you're looking at that, where do you go from there? Why would you expand to then take on, another mouth to feed when you've got teams in your league who are still losing money? Rutgers lost $100 million last year.
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that, again, it just highlights how little sense this makes overall, like financially, logistically, everything. It just doesn't make sense. And like, you can want it as bad as as bad as the next guy.
Mm-hmm.
The matter of fact is that you have to have two willing parties on either side, and it has to financially make sense for both of them. And there's a lot of places that it doesn't make sense for both of them. And so it's just not going to work right now.
Well, the canary in the coal mine was the regional sports networks. When they folded, you started to go, okay, there's money. Where's the money coming from? Okay, you have cable, which is, at this point, at its lowest point in the last 10 years, and it's not going back up. So there's that kind of money. It's not, the kind of money that ESPN and others used to get. You now have people spending between $60 and $120 on streaming services to watch their sports. So sports fans have never spent more money in their lives to watch the sports that they want to watch. And you're going to have multiples of that. So, I mean, there's no metric by which any of this makes sense at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just doesn't. And, there's not endless cash to just keep handing around to people.
Yeah. And as I said before, you get a lot of chirping from the Big 12 guys, right? We're going to go in and take these 3, 4, 5, 6 teams out of the ACC. And it's like, the idea of some of these former Big East schools, coming out there and wanting to play in the Big 12 makes no sense whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they did. Here's what they kind of downgrade. I'm saying about like the Big 12 guys now. They kind of downgrade. Well, Syracuse. Who wants them? Who wants Boston College? Who wants Pitt and some of these other schools? You're like, you know, not for nothing, but there's not a team that again. Let's extract the two Arizona schools, Colorado and Utah from this for the moment. You know, who out in the Big 12 is even on the same par with those universities with regard to name recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Is Baylor on the same recognition as Pitt or Syracuse or Boston College? No. Georgia Tech. I mean, look at Georgia Tech.
Yeah. And I think people look at it from a purely football perspective when they look at it,
Mhm,
when they look at this stuff like that. That's the lens that you view things through.
mhm.
And so it's just, and I mean, Baylor, relatively speaking, I think when you look at really the past, 10, 15 years
Mhm.
of Baylor football, their highs have been higher than some of those teams that you just
Yeah.
mentioned.
Mhm.
But yet, as a brand overall, and who they are as an athletics department in
Mhm.
totality, is very different. Except for Boston College. Boston College's athletics department is just shit
Yeah.
entirely. Um, but
It's not good.
yeah, but in terms of brand recognition, Baylor's not one of those schools that just pops off the paper for a lot of people, and at least this year they have a chance to pop. They have DJ Lagway in their quarterback,
Right.
which provides them, if nothing else, some intrigue on the football field.
Mhm.
Dave Aranda and his team, which has kind of lost a little bit of that juice that he was able to infuse into that program when he took
Mhm.
over. Um,
Right.
but yeah, again, you line them up, 1-to-1. Athletics and academics are they the same? No, they're not the same. And that's really Baylor when you're talking about it. That's one of your like more, I guess, more reputable schools in the Big 12, all things
Yeah.
considered, right now.
And again, no shade on Baylor. I've got a lot of friends down in that area, and they come out, year after year and play solid ball. And I mean, it's a small school; it's a private
Mhm.
university,
Yeah,
and so there's nothing wrong with that, with what they do. But it's we're looking at legacy universities, and everybody's like, well, what's Notre Dame going to do? Well, you know, some of the stuff that Jim Phillips and the ACC have been talking about is, maybe adding, if they lose a team or two, they're going to add a few teams, and maybe adding Army and Navy, as in football only. And Notre Dame would, if you look at what Notre Dame's played Navy, Pitt, Georgia Tech, Stanford, um, Navy Tech. I'm trying to think who else on that in that conference. If they put Navy in there, Army would be the other one. They played the only team Notre Dame has played Navy, USC, and Pitt more than any three teams they've had on their schedule in history.
yeah,
So that gives you a clue right there, that if you wanted to keep them happy, just let them play. Let them play the teams that they want in the conference.
yeah,
Just say these are the five teams you're going to play, and you can. Then that's all. They'll be happy. They're happy with their. Duke's not going anywhere. You think Duke's going to go to the Big 12?
no, no,
That never happened.
yeah. Duke can't really like afford to go. I think you look at the ACC and there's certain clusters that it feels like,
Hmm.
at least specifically, the three schools in Carolina, in North Carolina, just can't like afford. I don't think to leave the other two. Well, Duke and North Carolina can probably afford to leave NC State more than NC State can really afford to lose both Duke and North Carolina on their schedule. Um, but again, they're kind of a cluster. Do those fan bases want to lose those matchups? I don't think so. Um, and again, like Florida State and Miami, those two kind of feel like they need to have a matchup scheduled at some point. And I know that in the grand scheme of things, we look at it through a football lens and stuff like that. But also the people making decisions tend to not give a shit what we care about the football lens and these rivalries, because if they did, then we would be watching Notre Dame and USC this year. And there's just matchups like that across the board that as this expansion goes on and on, like you lose down the line. And I mean, for God's sakes, Georgia's not playing Tennessee this year. That feels insane for me to say. That's a game that I'm gonna miss watching. Wish it was still happening, but shout out Texas and Oklahoma. So glad we have them in the SEC now. We can make that happen. It's just
we still have Florida, Georgia.
yeah, but in the additions of these teams and of these schools to make these conferences bigger and the effort to chase the almighty dollar the best to their ability, they tear down the fabric of the sport as we keep going. And they do that through realignment. They do that through the expanded playoff. Like this is not the same game. Everybody's like, and I'm from the South, so this will probably apply to people listening and think, well, he just misses like the days when the SEC was the best. That's not at all. That's not at all what I want. What I want is the regular season to matter and the fabric and what this game was built on, like where you're at in the sport, to go back to some version of what it was. Really, closer to that 2021, because 2021 NIL got instituted. I think people forget how early on it got instituted, but it feels like we've lost the makeup and the fabric of the sport. And some of that has to do with the college football playoff. And the college football playoff, I would say, probably was a direct lead in to the conference realignment and the conference expansion. And, now Tony Petitti, and the businessman that he is pushing for a 2014 model, which is, just dumb.
What are you pro football then?
Yeah, it's stupid. Like there's not 24 because the argument continues to be made, and I think Notre Dame is probably their example from last year. Is they want to be in a spot now more teams than ever can win the championship, which I believe is true through the portal and NIL and stuff like that. And people say it's NIL, it's the portal that's what leads to it. Whether there was dollars on the table or not, there are going to be kids that were going to go chase different opportunities all along. But this version and this model, it's not a good sport. There's not 24 teams that can win a national title, and it's not something.
There's not 10.
Huh?
There's not 10.
There's not. And if you want to go through and you want to change something, change it to where you feel like you're getting the 12 best teams. That's what this was designed for. You go back to the 4 team, change it to where you're getting the 4 best team. This thing has been verbally, it's been one thing, but in theory, it's been another. Like verbally, well, we want the best teams. But we are going to give an automatic bid to a G5 team because of what Cincinnati did that one time in this entire existence. And yeah, we'll just give automatic qualifiers to the conference champions because that automatically means you're the best team. No, it doesn't. Not all conferences are created equal. Like at a certain point, you have to start, looking at metrics and not defining them by a win-loss column. And that hasn't happened yet. And if you don't believe me, go look at the college football playoff from last year. And it's just overall, it is a broken system, and there are so many steps that they have to go through to fix this thing. And for some reason, a lot of people online just want to skip them all and just go, yeah, who gives a shit how broken the sport is? I want to see Miami in the Big Ten play Oregon and Ohio State. And yeah, you get bigger.
And Miami doesn't.
Yeah. But the thing is like they were sold like they told us in this expansion thing what was going to happen, and that with expansion and this expanded playoff, it's going to give you more of these marquee matchups in these opening weeks. Bullshit. It hasn't. That hasn't happened. It has not delivered on any front by that means. It's taken some games off campus. It's taken away a lot of home and homes that were set up that were going to be good home and homes.
Yeah.
It's really the way the committee's decided on these playoff teams through the first 2 years. It's leading teams to cancel those matchups because there is no plus for it. Like there's no addition to playing those matchups.
Well, let me ask you this: to follow your point. What's the sense of playing college in playing conference championship games? I mean, because at that point you're screwing one of the team. You could both of those teams could be in the playoffs.
Yeah, so far there has been very little proven benefit to getting the bye and winning your conference championship. The only team that's had a bye and has won thus far, and granted, I know they retooled it and they reworked the seeding last year,
right.
But we've got 8 of these samples. We're 1 for 8 on a team with a bye winning their game. And now that was the eventual national champion in Indiana last year. I don't think it mattered if they got a bye, didn't get a bye. They could have played just about anybody and probably would have won. But it's the system has not proved out in any ways that they said it would. And I think going back, and the best example of it is you go back to last year and you look at Texas. And I get it, they lost to a bad Florida team. And by no means am I saying that Texas deserved to be in that playoff or anything like it. But what I will say is if you're Texas and Steve Sarkisian and you sit back and you look at the schedule and you go, man, if we had Furman on the schedule instead of Ohio State week 1, I bet we're in that college football playoff. And they would be right. That's the problem, is that they were right if they sit back and they make that assumption, because they don't look at the strength of record, the strength of schedule, anything like that. Those metrics, they say they matter. Maybe they do in some of the seeding and reseeding. But in terms of who gets in this thing at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
No. And the other part of the equation is, which I think is most important, is the fact that, you've got this whole situation of where, honestly, if you wanted to do this, okay, and now it's me being revisionist history, but if you wanted to play this way, right? Because it's football. Let's just call it what it is. We're talking about football. We're not talking about anything else. You should have created a conference, not a conference, but should have created an atmosphere where these teams, there was a football division and everything else. And so you don't screw up the conferences. The Pac-12 is still there. The Big 12 is still there. All of the schools regionally, it's still regional, except for college football.
Yeah.
Leave everything else alone and take the college football teams. And Curt Segretti, and I don't disagree with Curt on this. Curt Segretti, and I forget where it was. He was in the Chicago Tribune over the weekend. Curt said that, if they go 12, 24, whatever, over what they're doing right now, he said we might as well be professional football, because we're not going to be able to, to actually focus on the regular season.
Yeah, and I think when you go back and revisionist history, you're going to look at it. Conference realignment was for the sport of football. Like that's what got us there. That's what led us there. And they just continue to not figure football out in terms of everything. I think what Mike Elko said on the playoff and the way things have expanded, and he was talking about, he said, man, you asked me, I want a 60-team playoff. He said, I want it to be as easy to make.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, because that's how coaches are judged. That's your barometer, is making the college football playoff. So in terms of the coaches, in their eyes, yeah, go ahead. Go expand that thing out. It's better for the coaches if it's expanded out, but it's not better for the sport of college football. They've again, the fabric of this playoff and where it's led you, it is the downfall of bowl games. I know it sounds impossible to say, but there was a time where people were just happy to go to the Sugar Bowl when it didn't mean it was in the playoff as well.
Right.
That meant something. It meant something to win the SEC title and go get to play in the Sugar Bowl, even if you weren't eligible to win a national championship. There was an exclusivity in the sport and still something special about those bowl games. Whether it be, I know I talked about the Sugar Bowl, but hell, it was pretty cool to go to the Outback Bowl back in the day. Like, I enjoyed watching that game. But again, they don't matter. They don't care. And there's a greater argument for the dilution of bowl games. And, they've added so many that now they feel less special. And that's a fair point in terms of bowl games themselves. But the sport as a whole, everything has been built around this. And the reason it's been built around it is because it is the most financial, like these conferences and athletic departments are lining their pockets off of this college football playoff. Ad revenue, stuff like that, TV deals, everything. That's the moneymaker is the playoff, and that's the reason they wanted to expand it. They didn't get creative. They saw one thing that was working and said, how big can we make it? And that was never going to be the answer.
To your point, what I used to love to do on a New Year's Day, right? You could watch the Outback Bowl, you could watch the Citrus Bowl, whichever one you preferred. Then came up the Rose Bowl game, and then it was the Orange Bowl game, and also the Sugar Bowl, pretty much at the same time. But you had 4 bowl games there that meant something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Rose Bowl isn't the Rose Bowl anymore. The Orange Bowl's played at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. The Chick-fil-A Bowl, which 4 people couldn't name who was supposed to play in that game, is now some sort of seminal bowl from that standpoint. So you lose the idea of watching. The Sugar Bowl, as you said earlier, used to mean something. The Rose Bowl used to mean something. All these bowls used to mean something. They don't mean a damn thing anymore. They're just a sponsor for a playoff game.
Yeah, like you look at it, they're stepping stones now is what they are.
Sure.
And used to be that was the goal. Like the goal was to make the Sugar Bowl. Like the goal was to make these bowls. And they had conference ties and meanings. The Pac-12 and the Big Ten played in the Rose Bowl. That's what they did. And the SEC and apparently whoever the hell they wanted to put in the Sugar Bowl played in the Sugar Bowl. But there was conference ties.
Actually, that was the Big 12, well, Big 8, because it was used to be, if you remember, it used to be it used to be the Big 8, and then it was a wild card. It could be anybody.
Okay,
so,
that makes
that's where Miami. Remember, Miami beat Nebraska, I think, one year to win the national championship. And so that was the SEC's. The SEC did have a relationship for a very, very long time with the Orange Bowl, and then then the Sugar Bowl people came and said, well, we would like to do it in New Orleans, and so they're going, okay, well, fine, we can do that. So that's what they did, and then they went to to New Orleans, and so that was the SEC's thing. So it was the SEC that game at one point in time, which used to be very cool. Was they went ahead and they would just go ahead and play. They would play for. I'm trying to think of what. They would play for. And in other words, the SEC could play anybody who they designated at in that particular game. So just like I just said, it could be Miami and it could be Miami because they were the independent at that point in time. that could be your championship. So
Mhm.
that's why we saw championship type games being played. At that point in time, it was
Mhm.
because it would be the Big 12 or Big 8 or whatever. So you get that team playing. So you get like Oklahoma playing Miami. You got in the Sugar Bowl, you got Georgia taking on maybe Penn State or Ohio State or whomever.
Mhm.
But it wouldn't be Ohio State because they'd be in the Rose Bowl. But it would be, let's say, maybe it's Pitt or Syracuse or whomever from another conference. So the point was that the Big Ten and Pac were in the Rose Bowl. The Big Eight was in the or Big 12 was in the orange, and then the SEC had the sugar.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a pretty good example going on in terms of where golf is right now. There's a very popular saying where people are like, for a very long time it was grow the game, grow the game, grow the game.
Mm-hmm.
Now people who are upset with the current state, or at least what they feel like is the current state of golf, use the term shrink. Shrink the college football playoff. Like shrink what is going on in college football right now because it's not good for the long-term health of the sport.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sport that is built on the traditions of what used to be,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of keeps people coming back because it felt different than the pro game.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, maybe you're able to grab a bit of a broader audience when you continue down this model, but the longer you continue to merge the college game with the pro game, the more like hardcore kind of fans that you lose along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't think that's an overstatement because you hear people that I mean I to an extent like I used to follow recruiting like when I was in middle school I would get checked out so I could go home and watch signing day like that was something that happened. I followed it as best I could. Now I don't care. I genuinely don't care because it does not matter. Kid commits, that's fine. We're gonna see him decommit and recommit another 3 times, and that's not talking about everybody, but it's a pretty broad stroke statement that doesn't apply to everybody. But it is the way it feels. Like you land one of these top guys, like cool. He committed 6 months out from signing day. That doesn't matter because he's going to get 35 other offers in here and we're gonna play flip flop. And the matter of the fact is that it doesn't matter who he said he committed to. It doesn't matter where he visited. Hell, he could have never been to a school. If they slide an offer big enough across the table, then he's going to sign it. And more power to him because if that's what you're after, go get the money.
Mm-hmm.
But it just like that aspect's completely gone out of college football now. It's a lot harder to build your roster through high school football because now kids are more impatient than ever in terms of feeling like they deserve an opportunity. I think you've broken down a lot of these guys really overall their ability to develop in the college game because they don't stay in a system. They don't learn. Like it's been both good and detrimental to a college athlete because I think it's great that they're making money, but I feel like they've lost some of the learning and developing along the way in the process of it all.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where you hope that people get it, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But you know, I hope they don't exchange. They change it. I hope they don't change it any more than they've already changed it. Because if they go to 12 or 24, there's absolutely no reason to you know. No, I'm going to say no reason to watch it, but you've lost the charm of the whole thing.
Yeah, 24 is just tough. Like 24 feels like you're putting certain programs in a position to just like never miss the playoff ever again. Like there are certain programs like the odds at Ohio
Notre
State.
Dame would never miss it again.
Yeah, the odds of Ohio State missing a playoff appearance again if it goes to 24 is pretty much zero. I think, regardless of who they roll in there, I feel like a similar circumstances at Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
For as long as Kirby Smart's the head coach, same thing goes for Georgia. Like there's a certain echelon and tier of programs that you won't see miss the playoff. I think Texas under Sark is one of them as well. In Oregon right now with Dan Lanning, another one
Mm-hmm.
that they won't miss. Like there are certain programs that you can pretty much just hardwire in there for, like they're going to be in this playoff where, you don't know. And you get away from putting together an entire body of work across a season to now boiling down to who got hot over a few games.
Right.
You're
Well,
also talking about having to expand the schedule, by the way, in that like you're going to have to shrink a regular season down potentially in order to accommodate more games on the back end in a playoff.
well, yeah, because you can't. I mean, what exactly is gonna? How are you gonna do that?
Yeah.
It's gonna be tough. All right, before we get out of here, let me just run through today's Major League Baseball. Tomorrow we have the beginning of the Stanley Cup Finals, which will be, of course, the Golden Knights taking on Carolina. Uh, Interesting stat: Rob Brindamore has Carolina's won 100 um, playoff games in their existence. 98 of those games, Rob Brindamore has played in. So, pretty interesting little off the wall stat there. That gets underway tomorrow. Then, of course, as we said, Wednesday it's the Spurs host the Knicks game one. Just for those of you who want to know where to watch them, ESPN's got the hockey and the NBA's on ABC. So it's in the family, but two different sides of the group. Today, all right, let's go 6:40, the first game today. Tigers and the Rays. Let's see. Madden is pitching for Detroit. The Rays have got Jax on the mound. Marlins against the Nationals. Nationals had a heck of a June. They only lost one series in the entire month of June. They won all the other series. Marlins and Nationals. Sandy Alcantara pitching for Miami tonight, and Kay Cavalli on the hill for the Nats. Royals Reds. Reds, I'm sure, are happy to see Kansas City come to town. Everybody is in these days. Avila pitching for Kansas City, and Mr. Burns gets the ball for Cincinnati. White Sox at Twins. The White Sox have not named a pitcher yet. Minnesota is going to go with Ryan. Giants Brewers. Giants really underperforming this year. They are Roop is pitcher for San Francisco. Milwaukee's got Dorn. Rangers Cardinals. Jacob DeGrom. Jacob DeGrom for the Royals, and Greavy for St. Louis. Angels host the Rockies tonight. Boy, there's a duo of a game you not necessarily want to see. Colorado's got Freeland pitching, and Los Angeles got Soriano. By the way, I think Colorado's ahead of San Francisco. In the Rockies are 22-38, and the Giants are 23-36. So they're close. Dodgers D-backs. That's a big opening series. That's a 9:40 game. Sheehan against Rodriguez. And the last game of the night is out on the West Coast. The Mets taking on the Mariners. That game is Warren for the Mets, and Mr. Hancock gets the ball for the Seattle Seahawks, the Seattle Mariners. So there you go, boys and girls. That's what we got for tonight. That's about the size of it. Anything else you want to get to chat about before we get out of here on a nice outside anyway? It looks like a nice day on Monday.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the golf this weekend. Specifically, the way that Russell Henley was able to finish it out. I was really pleased with the finishing stretch of golf. That's kind of the way that honestly, the way that I've wanted these first two majors to end up, or at least something more similar to it. You had Russell Henley go down the stretch, birdie his last 3 holes after having what was a 1 over front 9. You go out on the back 9, he shoots 4 under, birdies the final 3 holes to get into a playoff with Eric Cole, and then he goes out on 18, birdies 18 again to win the thing. That was really impressive. You had Ben Griffin, the defending champion, also go on a run late, which I thought was it was just really nice to see these guys kind of really feel like you had a bit of a chase. Feel like you had people go and win a golf tournament. Aaron Rai did that at the PGA Championship, not take away from that, but it felt like it was fun to kind of see that chase. I think that's a fun dynamic in golf and a fun dynamic to end a golf tournament. It makes it a little bit more exciting, typically speaking. And then it happened in Athens for the regional. Georgia had a guy by the name of Trey Phelps. I believe he bats second for them. It's either first or second, but regardless, one of the key pieces plays third for Georgia in this run that they've been on so far in this postseason.
Mm-hmm.
It's a home run. His family is sitting above the Liberty dugout. He turns towards the Liberty dugout before he hits first base. The Liberty manager is up there arguing with the ump, saying that he should be thrown out. He was taunting. That carries an immediate 1-game suspension. And overall, it would not be an issue. I would not take issue with it if the Liberty coach in the post-game press conference was able to answer a question. But he couldn't tell you what he said. He had no idea what he said. He just said he thought it was nasty, and so he went out there and said it. Well, I can tell you, I watched the game yesterday. The Liberty pitcher, first baseman, second baseman, I saw all of them. Liberty is essentially the BYU for Christians, and they said some very non-Liberty things out there on that baseball field. It's pretty odd if you ask me. Also extremely soft out of that team overall, specifically the manager, though. I mean, just one of the softest things. I get it. You went down a run, like one run you went down. And you're up there, bitching and moaning that somebody was celebrating a home run. Let the kids play.
Yep. No question about it. All right, boys and girls. Have a good day. We'll be back tomorrow. Plenty to talk about as we get ready for the Stanley Cup Finals, and we'll have some baseball scores from college for you to see, what's going on and who's moving on up from that standpoint. So for Matt, it's Jim. Take care, everybody. We will see you tomorrow.